Hey, everybody. Yay. Melissa, hi. So I'm pretty sure I'm the one who came up with the topic when we talked about it because I love to pick topics where I see less because then I get to explore it with other people and um, I get to hear how I'm seeing it in the moment. So I picked fear and it feels like to me, fear's been and is part of my experience constantly. Started at a very young age, I'm sure. Um, and at times in my life, I became very small to avoid that and everything that came with it, or what in my mind would come with it. So I love this topic. I think one of the most meaningful things that I first read about fear was in a book that came out, I'm going to say maybe in the 90s. It was called Conversations with God. I don't know if anybody's ever read that, but there was this idea that everything that we do or think is either from love or from fear, and there's nothing else. That was the first time that I started to look at fear and realize what was behind so much of what I did or said or thought. So I was thinking about what I wanted to share today as I kind of jumpstart this conversation about fear. And one of my favorite quotes from one of my favorite teachers in the principles, Natasha Swerdlov, she said, and I have the quote because I keep it in front of me all the time, is she says, the feeling is an invitation to see that I'm caught up in thought and that I've forgotten who I am. And the first part has always been kind of like, since I started looking in this direction, kind of easy, like, oh, I'm caught up. Oh, I'm caught up, right? And we can see that and get a sense of that sometimes. But the second part, when you put those two together, I've forgotten who I am. It seems to, for me, remind me that not only am I caught up in thought, but I've also forgotten who I am. And it's these feelings like fear that are the invitation to see that. And there's one other thing that occurred to me is I remember when I first started getting into coaching and I started to do blogs and podcasts. I remember I was in a coaching conversation with somebody and they said, how do you put all that stuff out there in front of everybody? Didn't that scare you? And I was like, apparently not, because I put it out there and I didn't think about it, right? So apparently not. But the fact that they thought that it was so edgy and vulnerable and something to fear, I was like, and it kind of made me think that I did that without thinking about it in that way. But I remember when I was younger, I had so many walls. Like I can remember not wanting to hug people or say, I love you. I was afraid. I don't know what I was afraid of, but realizing that I was starting to use that word so frequently and to be very comfortable hugging people, even people I didn't even know. And looking back on that, I realized that I didn't change myself. It didn't occur to me to be like, I'm going to hug more people. Like it didn't do that. I just did. And I realized that life was taking care of the fear for me. I wasn't doing anything with the fear, it was changing me. And as a result, I had less fear. And I'm not sure if you guys have heard anything in any of those things, but that's just what occurred to me when I thought about introducing the topic today. But I would love to hear it if anything did occur or it made you think of anything.
I have a question for you, Kate.
Oh, yes.
Because you said something that I went, er? You said, I didn't do anything to the fear. The fear was changing me. The fear, what did you say? And
Life
what did you mean by that?
changing me.
Oh,
Life
life was changing you. Oh, okay. I
taking
thought,
care of the fear for me.
can you tell me more about that? Like, what do you see? I'm really curious.
You know, most of the time when I guess by looking in the direction that I've been looking in, I guess. The times when I find that life is changing me without me having to make a decision or do anything, it's always seems to be in the rear view. You know, like the person saying, oh my gosh, weren't you scared to do that? And then when I looked in and how he saw it, and I remembered how afraid I was and how many walls I built up around myself. And I seem to notice it in the rear view when life changes me rather than in the moment. And it truly is for me so definitive that I haven't done anything because it's not on my radar until it's already been done. And for me, when I realize that something's different and I haven't done anything for it, Man, those are the best. I can actually think of another example. Bernie, I know I spoke to this at one of our meetings, but um I used to be very organized and clean, like really organized and clean. Like anybody who knows me, okay, I like things a certain way. It's obvious, right? But it was worse, much worse. And I know that I did it to control my internal world, to settle me down. I know that. Like if this out here was organized in a certain way, then I could settle in my head. Like that's how I managed to do that. I wasn't really on to how it worked yet. That's how I handled it. And then when I first moved to Florida, I lived with my sister, and I realized that she was asking me to do certain things, like clean certain, and I realized, oh my God, I'm not doing it anymore. Like, oh my God, I'm not the clean where she is. That's so weird. And I realized that I didn't need it like I did to settle me down. But once again, I didn't make that decision, and I noticed it only in the background of my life having changed. I guess I was settling and I didn't need it. It didn't make sense. I don't know. That's how I know that life, that I can be changed by life or truth, however you want to say it. That's a good question.
Good answer, Kate.
Well, the thing that I wanted to share was around um, fear mostly, if not all, is about the future. It's about some thought about the future, about something, is going to hurt me in some way, like big or small. And so that's to me the experience of fear. And the thing that has been changing is, I can have many of those thoughts every day, even during the course of this 15 minutes, I may have had some. But what's so amazing is that has changed is to see like the experience of what I call fear isn't hurting me in the moment. And that is so brilliant. That's so different. And so I can have thoughts about the future and have an experience I call fear, but I can also have the feeling it's not hurting me. And so the opposite of hurting is safe. The safe is the word. So it's kind of trippy to feel like I can be safe in the middle of fear. And to me, that just points to, the fact that I am and we are like we're safe within any kind of thought, emotional experience. Like it's never hurting us. And that's been such a life changer for me. And even as Kate was talking, first of all, I just felt like I in this like really beautiful quiet space. And it's not the words at all. But I was having these moments, it's like, I don't even know what fear is right now. Like I know I've experienced it. I know I'll probably experience it. But like in this moment, like, is it what is it? It's not even like a thing. It's just whatever, just sensations and thoughts. But it doesn't even have to be a thing. So fear became kind of nebulous, which that's nice too. Like if you say, well, I don't think I'm safe in the middle of feeling fear, it's like, well, we have something else for you. Maybe the whole idea or what it is can start to feel kind of fluid because I think it actually is. And sometimes we catch on to that. So yeah, that's just what I wanted to share. So thanks.
Curious if
Well,
any of our beautiful, I cut you off, Bernie. Is it okay if I ask if anybody has questions? And if they don't, okay. Yeah, if anybody has questions or things that they'd like to share, I would love to hear. And Bernie will talk after that.
Melissa, go ahead.
Yeah, kind of like what Tom was saying, he just kind of like realized what the heck is fear? When you were saying, Kate, about not having fear and doing something, I think that's what you said. And then somebody said, weren't you afraid? And then you're like, crap, like, should I have been? And it's just interesting how maybe naturally, yeah, sometimes we have fear, a lot of times, but sometimes we have the confidence to try something. And it's not until somebody says something to us that kind of knocks us out of our surety. Um, yeah, where we give away power. I don't know, it's interesting. Just kind of like you can be in a really good feeling and feeling. I remember after I did the Ironman and I didn't do it in any fast speed, this a girl that I used to train with, and I don't think she felt very good about herself because when I saw her the first time, she says, "I'm surprised you finished." I want to say, what the fuck? And I just thought, oh, yeah, I did. And then I felt bad, but I had finished. I just kind of like let it rain on my own parade. And it's just is interesting how often that I do that. I do it less more, but yeah, it's just interesting. From the outside in, it can become a shit show real quick. And you can quote me on that.
Well, what occurred? Thank you, Melissa. What occurred to me was a few years ago, my people pleasing just vanished overnight, and I was like, I don't know why it happened. It just did. I'm sure it was being this understanding. But as you were talking, Kate, it occurred to me I was afraid my people pleasing may have been coming from my fear of upsetting other people if I said no. And maybe because of that, I couldn't allow myself to hear my no. And once I saw through that what fear is, that it is an illusion. It's not, feeling can feel real, but the thoughts that create they're just made up. And suddenly I could hear my no, my authentic no. And that was more important to me than any fear I might have and what other people might think about me or whether they'd get upset. And of course, which is all, I was making up anyway. I think it's one thing that's been like, it was such a night and day thing, and I don't know what it was, and it just feels like, oh yeah, it was seeing something around fear, and I couldn't have articulated it, but that's what makes sense to me. And like when Tom, you said about this fear, am I going to feel it? Almost like, am I going to feel it again? Of course, I know I will, but in this moment, it's not present because I'm more connected with who I am by, I say, by being in this space. Or, that's my thinking. By me being in this space, I'm in a quieter space of mind. When I'm more myself, fear is not here. And can you read that quote by Natasha again, Kate? Because it was, maybe even put it in the chat because I I loved it.
She said, the feeling is an invitation to see that I'm caught up in thought and I've forgotten who I am.
Yeah, that's cool.
Oh, and she said something else too that I quoted, and it's gentle. The invitation, I guess. But I wrote it down and it's gentle.
Yeah, that's really beautiful, Kate. What I hear in that is it's quiet, and so we miss it. The invitation's always there. It's quiet, it's gentle, but it's always there. And I feel like we can just catch on to it at some point. Like we suddenly catch on to like a bird singing right outside the window that's been singing all day. And then we just suddenly, oh, there it is. I love that you share that. I love that.
I think I want to go to the edge of what I'm seeing about fear, what I'm contemplating. I had a conversation a couple months back that will be released on my podcast this week or next with Jenny Gadelband, who lives in Israel. And we were talking about fear. And she said something in our conversation. Now, this seemed to have deeper meaning for me in the context of knowing where Jenny was, literally in a war zone, where it might actually be physically dangerous for her to leave her house. And she has children who live there with her. And so she said the phrase, walk with fear like a friend. And I heard that in Natasha's quote that you shared, Kate, that fear, what if it was my friend? What if it is? And I don't think I'm seeing that. I don't have that experience, but I am contemplating it. I am looking there. I am noticing. And with what you said, Tom, about what is fear? Like, what is it even? It feels very fluid in this moment. It feels very much like, oh, I don't know what it is, but it's not what I thought it was, for sure. And I feel the possibility of being with it. Maybe not as a friend, but maybe as a friend, as a companion that doesn't need to go away. That was the other piece in that quote that I heard. Because if I'm caught up in thought and I know who I am, it's not a problem. I can be with anything because who I am is not. Who am I? Good Lord. Who I am is not the fear. Who I am is more like the space the fear is happening in. And so it doesn't touch me in the same way, even in the midst of it. I know myself as safe. But if I forget and I think that I am however I've made up Stephanie that day, then fear is really scary. And what I do know about fear that only gets clearer for me is that it can't stop me from anything. And it doesn't look like a reason to stop anymore. And it used to. Holy smokes, did it ever. I put the brakes on because of fear. It's not safe. Something bad's going to happen. What will they think? What if it doesn't work out? What if it's the wrong thing? Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Brakes, 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 brakes. And now I feel it and I go, who cares? Do it anyway, if I want to do it. And it doesn't run me like it did. And oh, I'm going to say there are certain areas of my life where I still put on the brakes when fear comes on the scene, but I'm onto it more than I ever have been. And it stops me so much less. And I know it can't. I stop myself sometimes. Chika, anything interesting coming up? Any questions? Anything sparking that you'd like to share? Something that looks a little different?
Hi, I'm Vanna. I'm new to your group, thanks to Melissa. Anyway, as you were talking about the what ifs and why I shouldn't, this popped into my head that we can think of a million reasons not to. And if we need more of them, we just need to ask a friend.
What makes that? I mean, I'm laughing at that, like, and you're laughing at that. What makes that interesting to you? I'm curious.
Well, it's just and things that I've done in my life, and I I'll use this example. So I wanted to do a marathon, and I was not a runner. I mean, I really wasn't an athlete at all. Anyway, and I wanted to do this when I turned 60. Well, I didn't get to do it when I turned 60 because our business, I was too busy. But at 63, we retired. And so I still wanted to do it. And I had done some shorter things, but I was not a runner. Anyway, so everyone, all my friends and family, oh my gosh, you're too old, you're going to get hurt, you're going to hurt yourself. Why would you want to do this? And it occurred to me they were basing that opinion on what they thought they could do. And so I was going to this really great chiropractor, and I asked him, and he said, "Oh no, you're fine. You can do this, and I'll be your coach," because he was more of a cyclist but a runner. And yeah, and then I will keep you healthy. And so I did it. And Melissa, I had no idea you were an iron woman. And halfway through, IT band problem. I couldn't run, but I could walk. And I finished it. And it was just that, it just reminded me of when you are talking about something that you're interested in doing, and your friends, family, are they're listening and they want to give you advice. And I've been the advisor a few times, that they're not basing it on what you know that you can do or what you want to do or they're basing it on what they know and what scares them. And yes, it was scary. I'd never done 26 miles. I'd never trained for it. But just knowing that I did it and that I could do I didn't ever do another one, but I did many half marathons. And just knowing that I could do the distance, I could finish no matter what, no matter the training I did. And that the IT band was really the only injury I ever had, because I got better at things. And so anyway, that's what it made me think of is, yeah. So anyway, happy to be here. You guys are great.
Mhm. Thanks, Anna. What a great story. Mm. And what I really heard in that was other people were speaking from their own fear. We don't see clearly under the influence of fear. And we'll try to do whatever we know to do to keep safe, including discouraging our friends from doing something that we think makes us feel scared. Hey, Jason.
Hi, Steph. So, lots of you, some of you know my history, my past. Um, I've been some of the scariest places on earth, being in the United States Marine Corps. And fear, I can't tell you anybody that's not afraid, but fear kept us safe. Fear of doing something, fear was healthy for us. We lived in fear. It goes back to what your Israeli friend said: walk with fear as a friend. Fear was our guide. But then I had my irrational fear of the dentist. It just, it is what it is. I'm glad that made you smile. Yeah, I can get shot at all day long. Tell me I have to go to the dentist and I'm going to cower. Um, I'd rather go get shot at, actually. But it's the story I tell myself. It's the fear I've created as far as the dentist goes. Yeah, I'm working on it, but it's not fun. Yeah. So that's my take on fears. It's not a bad thing to be afraid. It's it can be very healthy. Just like as you said, your Israeli college. That's a different story. They're born and they walk in fear on a basis because of where they live. And I was fortunate and unfortunate enough to live that lifestyle for about 10 years, where every day we walked in fear. But that fear kept us safe. So that's my story for today.
Thank you, Jason. Yeah, while you were talking, it occurred to me, or right before you started talking, it occurred to me that I've been playing this game, and it's not really a fun or productive game. Maybe I'm going to call it the fear game. And this is the way it works, is that I think of doing something, and that might come from, an intuitive hit, but then immediately my thinking kicks in and has some fearful thinking around it, and boom, I don't do it. Is this a game anyone else plays, or is it just me? And I think I'm sharing it because I wanna shine more light on it for me. I wanna like become I know I'm doing it, but I'm not usually aware of it in the moment. So maybe by talking about it, it will help me notice it a little quicker. Because, that's not the kind of fear that's keeping me safe, like you were talking about, Jason. This is the kind of the fear that's keeping me small, keeping me from having more of the things that I would like to experience in life. So I don't really have anything more on that. I'm doing this for me. I wanna
Mhm.
become more aware when I'm playing this silly fear game and catch myself at it more quickly. I also want to acknowledge there's times when I do notice the fear and I don't buy into it.
Mm.
So I'm I'm on the journey around releasing this fear game that's not serving me.
Well, the thing that I was just going to share that maybe applies to that is partly like in our language around fear. Like how often have we heard, or we might have said something like fear is stopping me from doing this, or I'm letting fear stop me from doing this. And the thing that can be such a like a life changer is just to simply realize that the fear doesn't actually have any power itself. And the way I see it, and I saw this very easily first in my painting, because my painting's very free, and then I would talk to other artists, and there's a lot of, I don't know if you would call it fear, but you know not nice things that come up, and people would say, well, my doubt's preventing me from painting, something like that. And what I saw that was just a little shift, and I think truer, is that I can use fear, or fear can become a reason to not do something, which is different from fear having the power to stop me. And that's probably why sometimes you feel fear and you don't do something, other times you feel fear, you still do it. So that proves it in itself has no power. It might feel like it does, we might think it does, but it actually has no power. So I think what happens sometimes is just for me, if I just consider in a moment when I'm feeling afraid to do something, that it actually doesn't have any power. And sometimes maybe it's telling me something useful. Maybe it's really telling me I don't really want to do this thing, and I think I'm supposed to do it. So fear becomes a reason not to do it. All kinds of things. But the main thing I want to say is that it has absolutely no power of itself. No power. And just to consider that from time to time. And that can really change your experience. And I see Anna has her hand up.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, everybody. It was 6 a.m. here when this whole started, so I'm only just waking up. But it's been lovely to listen. And the first thing I wanted to say is it's lovely to come to a conversation like this and have a lot of space. I feel the yeah, I feel that's really on point for me, which is something I especially need right now. My head is going blah 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 with a bunch of stuff, and it's like, oh, this feels good. And to be honest, I hear the word fear a lot of times, and I was like, okay, what's the opposite of fear? And according to ChatGPT, it's love or peace. And speaking about the game, Bernie, I played that game too. I think we all play that game. When I was in my 20s, I read the cover of a book from Marianne Williamson, and the book is called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. And I was like, oh, I can do that? I can just override the fear and do it anyway? Because at the end, by then I was already kind of on to thought, how thought creates the experience. So when I was listening to Tom, what came to mind is like, how, for example, it would be to, goal chase, goal set, setting goals and going at it from a place of peace. Because we can count on our personal mind to bring our fears, right? That's like a given. But what about peace? What am I not what I'm not appreciating, that peace is also within me. Both experiences are within me. And I think the antidote to fear is understanding. And is understanding what creates fear. So yesterday I have a new whiteboard that, it's still a bit odd for me to be using a whiteboard, but I was in a call and we went to mind plus consciousness plus scary thoughts equal scary experience. So that's a formula that I'm using a lot because it always works the same way. We have mind, we have consciousness, and then in the place of thought, if I put compassionate thoughts, well, I'll have the experience of compassion. So, just saying a lot here, but putting it all in, on the table, in case it's helpful, is really helpful for me to hear that now because of this. The feeling is of, I'm afraid. I'm sitting in my uncomfortable, safe living room and I'm feeling this fear, right? And it's like, it's almost like it makes me want to focus more on it. And it's uncomfortability, its origin, its explanation. But what if I don't want to focus on fear right now? And I can focus on settling down, and I feel that's what the feeling in the room was doing for me. Just good listening is always helpful for understanding. I think that's the other thing when you were saying, Bernie, maybe speaking it out loud will make it more visible. Yeah, sometimes we say things out loud and we're like, oh, I can see how that sounds. Inside our head, somehow it's like, yeah, it makes sense. I'm afraid of this. But when you say it out loud, it's like, wait a minute. So thank you for sharing that. And yeah, thank you, everybody. It's really, really good to be here.
Good to have you here, Anna. I want to speak to something that, interestingly, I notice a little bit of fear about sharing. Because I haven't walked with fear the way my friend Jenny has or the way Jason has. And I like to make a distinction about those situations and the kind of fear that most of us have. 99% of the time. Because the fear in a true life and death situation, the experience of it, and again, I have not had that experience myself. So I say this with humility and also openness to maybe Jason can let me know from his experience that when you walk with fear and your life is truly in danger, there's a clear and present danger to your body, which is very real. Your senses get incredibly sharp. And your perspective is clear and focused because you have to be. The body actually shuts down processes like sexual reproduction and your bowels, your digestive system, to put all of the energy where it needs to be to keep you safe. And that's in a clear and present danger. And people who have been in that situation often speak of it as having the most clarity and presence. So that kind of fear is a very different experience than the one that I felt before saying this, which was a thought in my mind that, oh God, I can't say this because who am I to try to say what it's like to be shot at when I have never been shot at? And what will Jason think of me if I do? You know, that fear does not keep me safe. That fear lets me know that I have fearful thinking. And if I walk with it like a friend, I can see it and let it point me right back to this moment where that's not what's happening. And in this moment, I am safe. And by being in this moment and being aware, if something does happen that is a clear and present danger to me, I am more likely to be able to meet it with clarity, being present, than I am getting caught up in the feeling of fear, which is terrifying. So I don't need to be right about that. But I do call into question if fear keeps me safe the way I experience it most of my time and for most of my life, in the form of anxiety and worry. Because I held on to it. I held on to those fears and gave my attention to them because I thought it was keeping me safe, and it was not.
As you're talking, Stephanie, a memory pops into my head. This has happened more than once, where I've been driving along and then maybe someone pulls out in a way that if I don't take evasive action, there's going to be an accident. And like, I don't know what happens, but I am just moving my hands, the car turns, and like in it, my recollection in that moment is like that presence you're talking about. It's just, I'm not even sure doesn't even feel like I'm in charge in a way. This is just happening. And then I'm out of the moment of danger. And then the fear comes. Right? And it's like, oh my God, I could have died there. Oh my God, they could have been late, and I do think that there is, and I've heard other people talk of times when they've had this life-threatening moment, like having a gun put to their head. And I think it might Mara Gleason, and she said that she just went completely still. It was like something took over, and she ended up having a conversation with the intruder. And eventually he put his gun down and they talked. And I think he was going to steal stuff. And eventually he left. And when he left, that's when she freaked out. It's so interesting how we do that. Our fear can come from what didn't happen in the past or what might happen in the future. That's some really good sources of fearful thinking. And we don't know what's going to happen in the future. And the past has already happened. I mean, I do find it interesting why did I get so scared? And I just see, well, of course, based on the thinking I was having, of course I'm going to feel scared. I don't, it's easy to say this. I didn't need to have that thinking, and I did.
You know, I think we're also familiar with feelings of fear. Um, there's a periods of time where I might say that that feeling dominated my life, or it looked like it dominated my life. Um, and I wonder if we're as familiar with the feeling of safety, or whatever word you would use, the feeling of being safe in the moment. And I'm saying that feeling of safety or safe is way, 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 way more available, like on a daily basis, than I ever imagined it could be. So one of the things that this is kind of like an invitation to everyone, or just maybe even something I'm curious about. Like I'm just wonder if going forward, like in the next little bit after this call, if people just start to notice that, like notice safety when it's actually available, which like in my life is actually most like right now, what I would describe as my current life, it is actually most of the time like a feeling of safety is available. And so it's not something that we even like create. It's just there. It's just available. So I guess maybe it's an invitation, a curiosity, or maybe even a hope that we all, because it's nice, it's a nice feeling to feel safe. It really is. And just to know that it's available, it's natural, it's underneath everything. Like when Kate was saying, quoting Natasha about forgetting who we are, like one of the qualities that you might say of who we are is there is safety there at our deepest being. So anyway, that's kind of my hope for us going forward. And I was just wondering, because I know we just have a few minutes late, because Kate, you started us off so beautifully. Do you want to say a few things to kind of send us off?
Mm, I think the first thing I want to say is that I love that you pointed us back there. Um, Like we're safe 99.9% of the time. Most of us, I guess. And I think we spend very little time in that feeling. Which is amazing how we do that. And probably in fear a very little percent of the time. Yet we remember it and plan for it and avoid it. So I appreciate you pointing that out. And I think a lot of us have been in enough conversations about thought and how thought creates our experience. But I would also say that we can't see it till we see it. So if we're in it, we're, that's it. But it's these conversations, I think, that talk about, when we're looking in this direction of, oh, I'm caught up and I've forgotten. That's where we start to, I think, get a sense of that feeling and what's being offered in it. The gift, the invitation. And it's gentle. Thank you guys so much for being here with us.
Thank you.
Steph, can you remind everybody when our next one is in case?
I can. It is second Thursday of the month. So that will be April the 10th,
Lovely.
2025 at 1 p.m. Eastern time. And you can find out the conversion for your time zone. Beautiful. Hope to see you then, or perhaps before.
You never know.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. This was
Thanks
sweet.
so much.
Yeah.
Beautiful.